And the really cool thing is, like, when we learn how to channel our spirit guides at really high levels, man, we can do so many awesome things with it. It can help improve like our relationships and our career and our soul's purpose and our health and on and on and on. And that's why I do what I do. So my name is Ken Lewicki. Feel free to check out my website, channelinginc.com. And this is the Ask Ken show. So the way that this works is you ask any questions that is spiritual and you put that in the chat, and then I will answer those questions and I will live channel the answers. So it's not just like me making it up or hypothesizing or thinking it's this or thinking it's that. I will actually go ahead and live channel the answers. So welcome to the Ask Ken show. And today, what we're going to start off with is, why do we have spirit guides? So this came in and from actually a client of mine who was curious about, like, why do we even have spirit guides? And it's a great question, like, why do we? So the way that it works is that when we're here and we're alive on this planet, we live a certain time, and then when we die and we cross over, we go to the astral realm to be with our soul family. But while we're incarnated, certain members of our soul family help and assist us while we're incarnated. And they do it because they love us. So my experience has been that most people have somewhere between 3 to 5 spirit guides during any one season of our life. And each spirit guide helps us with a different area of our life. So they help us in these different areas. And when we're incarnated, they can change. So certain soul family members can change who is our spirit guide and how they help and assist us during different seasons of our life. But when we're not incarnated and in soul form, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we can actually be spirit guides for other members of our soul family who are incarnated, which is really neat. So it's kind of like a reciprocity, whatever that word is, where it's reciprocal, where they help us and then we help them when they're incarnated and things like that. Or yeah, so that's the way that works. And let's see, another questions. So I've had this question asked quite a bit of me. It's, who do I channel? And the reason why I get this question is because people think, oh, so you do channeling for a living. Okay, so who do you channel? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they think that I channel like, there's some people out there that channel a certain, a soul or a certain being or something like that, or a certain collective. I don't do that. What I do is I teach people how to channel their soul, their higher self, and their spirit guides. And depending on how many spirit guides they have, I teach them how to do this. So that's what I do for a living. Like I actually train people and empower people how to channel, how to tap into their spirit guides. And also then at more advanced levels, I teach them how to channel things like sprites, fairies, dragons, crystal divas, how to do psychometry and read objects, even how to channel trees and animals. So I do animal communication, all those things I teach people how to do, because there's all these amazing things that we can channel. And I always emphasize that we make sure we channel safely, so we're not channeling anything we shouldn't. So I also train my students how to do that in channeling level 2, and then of course level 3 and so on. And so what I do is I go ahead and I teach people how to do this because I want to make sure that they're doing everything in a safe, proper way. All right. So if you're watching this, please check out my website, channelinginc.com. And my name is Ken Lewicki. I have full certification workshops, and we'll talk to you soon. Oh, and I just have a viewer. Hi, Champagne. My name is Ken. Where are you from? Just if anyone is watching this, just mention where you're from. And also, if you have any questions, you could type it in the chat box. Another question that has come up is, what is channeling like? So I get this question a lot. People think like there's 2 basic types of channeling. There's trance channeling, and then there's also what's called what I call conscious channeling. And there's not that there's one right, one wrong. So people often think when they say, oh yeah, I teach channeling for a living, They think that I'm going to get them to go in this trance state and then they're going to like lose themselves and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. And I actually meet some people that are like, oh, can you teach me how to do that? And I'm like, well, I can, but there's another way that I teach people how to do it, and it's called conscious channeling. So the reason I teach conscious channeling is because I want people to make channeling like an everyday part of their life. So what I'm doing right now, I'm channeling. When I go to the gym, I channel. When I'm in a yoga class, I channel. When I'm at the grocery store, guess what? I channel. Like even when I'm driving my vehicle, I channel. By the way, if you're going to drive your vehicle when you're channeling, please make sure you do it with your eyes open. So, yeah, you definitely want to make sure you have your eyes open when you're channeling. But it doesn't need to be some weird, like, like you're going into a weird trance state and stuff like that. And it can be if you want, and that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, what I want to do is I want to make channeling so normalized that it's just an everyday part of our life. When I used to work with the government, I'd be in board meetings and I'd be channeling the answers, and they'd be like, "Wow, Ken, like how'd you know that? Like that's incredible." And I'd be like, "Oh, it just sort of came to me, right?" Because they're not really into the spiritual stuff. But you can do this and just make it like a normal everyday part of your life through channeling. So that's what I do. And that's what I train my students to do, is how to channel where it's just a normal kind of everyday thing. All right. So a question from Champagne is, how do I know if I am channeling for my spirit guides or my higher self? In my channeling level 1 workshop, I cover this in great detail. So it's like 16 hours of training in level 1. And I get through this specifically where basically we have our soul, and I take them through channeling their soul and getting to know their soul on a really deep, intimate level. The next thing I do is I get them to channel their higher self, and I get them to identify their higher self and know the difference between their higher self and their soul. And it's distinctly different, way different than each other. And a lot of people don't know that. They come into channeling level 1 thinking that they're the same thing. And I get it. I used to think that they're the same thing. Now, our higher self has a totally different feel from it. It's completely different than our soul. It's more etheric, more lighter. It actually resides in the astral realm, which is where our spirit guides also reside. And if you think about it this way, our spirit guide, our higher self is kind of like a spirit guide for ourselves, but it's an aspect of ourselves. So it's not a spirit guide. I want to make that clear. It's not a spirit guide, but it's like a spirit guide. That's an aspect of ourself. It resides in the astral realm. It also resides about 1 foot above our head in this earth plane and in the astral. So now, after that, once you get to know your soul really well and your higher self really well, and you know the difference between the two, then I train my students how to channel their spirit guides. And you're going to notice that our spirit guides are souls like you and I. So we have a soul. That's why I start with the soul, because I want my students to get to know their own soul and get them to know themselves and get to know their past lives, and their past lives, not just on this planet, but past lives on another planet. Yeah, I know, it's cool, right? Like, what? Other planets? Yes, most of us have lived on other planets as well. So I get you to connect with your soul and take you through a past life regression on another planet, which is super cool. So then you get to know your soul really well, and your higher self is completely different because it's more etheric, it's lighter. A soul has more substance, more density. And then when we channel our spirit guides, they are also souls, and they're like similar characteristics as our soul, where they're like dense, and you could tell it's a soul and not a higher self. You could tell the difference between the soul and these souls and your higher self. But also each one of those spirit guides, I call them energy signatures, are different. They're different souls from your soul family, and they're in your spirit guides at this time in your life, this season of your life. And it could change. Another season of your life, you might have 3. Another season of your life, you might have 5, and so on and so on. So that's how you can identify the difference between your higher self and your soul, is by getting to know your soul, getting to know your higher self, and then getting to know your spirit guides. And by doing that, you'll be able to distinguish the difference with practice, and formal training helps a lot by taking, like, for example, my channeling level 1 workshop. So really great question. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really great question. Okay, so how can I get a higher vibration enough to connect with a past loved one? So what's kind of a myth out there, and again that comes to trance channeling, is they think that we need to get in this higher vibration state, and it does help. I do agree. So there's several things that when I first started to teach channeling, I would just get my students to go straight into, okay, let's connect with your spirit guides or your family members, your loved ones, things like that. Let's jump right into it. But what I learned is that there's actually a technique that I developed that can help my students get into um, a more conducive state to channeling. Basically, set them up for success. So if you're watching this right now, I'm going to get you to actually do this rather than just sitting there listening, going, "Okay, that sounds great." I'll actually get you to do this. So I'll explain it first, and then I'll walk you through it, and then I'll get you to have you do it. So the three things that you can do is, one is you can ground yourself. And the way that you ground yourself, there's actually two ways. Not a lot of people know this, but the two ways that you can ground yourself is through your root chakra. Imagine like a cord coming out of your root chakra, going deep, deep, deep down into the earth and wrapping around the center of the core of the earth and make it nice and tight, nice and taut. Okay. That's one way. And then the other way is grounding through your feet. And imagine roots coming out of your feet and going deep into the ground. You don't have to be on the ground to do this. You could be sitting cross-legged. You could be sitting on the fifth floor of a building. Doesn't matter. Just imagine roots going deep down out of your feet into the ground. Anchor it into the ground, and then that'll get you nice, nice and anchored. So those are the two ways to ground, and I do recommend that you do both ways. The next thing that I also recommend for my students to, before they channel, is to center themselves. And what this means, centering themselves, is gather all your energy from the past, bring it to the present. Gather all your energy from the future, bring it to the present. So bring all that energy to this present moment. Okay. And what that does is it helps you to be centered and focused right now in the moment, so that you're not worrying about what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. You're just focused presently, right here, right now. And then the third thing that I'll get you to do is channel source energy. So a lot of us, we use like our chi energy down here. It's not that it's bad to use that. It's fine during certain applications and certain circumstances. Using your chi energy is totally fine. However, you don't need to use it when you're doing channeling. I I like to try to get my students to get to a point where they're channeling all the time. That's what I do. It doesn't mean I'm constantly having communication, but I'm open to receiving messages from my spirit guides and or loved ones or whoever. But to do that, I want to be using source energy, so I'm not like a battery. I'm not getting draining my battery on my phone. Like, I'm not draining the battery within my chi energy. But when you tap into source energy, it's infinite amount of energy that you can have access to all the time. So the way that you do this is you imagine like source energy coming in through your crown, it comes in through your chakras, and then it goes in both directions. And it's constantly flowing in both directions, and you just have it flow. All right, so those are the three things I'm going to get you to do. If you're watching this right now, just take a moment. I'm going to get you to go ahead and close your eyes, and I'll do it with you. So 3, 2, 1. Take a nice deep breath and go ahead and close your eyes. Okay, now what I'm going to get you to do is focus on grounding. So you're going to ground both ways. You're going to ground with the root chakra, the cord coming out of the root chakra, going deep, deep, deep down into the earth, wrapping around the center of the earth, make it nice and taut. So go ahead and do that. And then at the same time, go ahead and have the roots coming out of your feet and go deep into the earth. Okay, now next thing I'll get you to do is center yourself. So gather all that energy from the past, bring it to the present, gather all that energy from the future, bring it to the present, and just bring it to right now. Go ahead and do this. Center yourself. Okay. Now I'm going to get you to channel using source energy. So go ahead and draw in source energy. Okay. And then from there, this will help you be in a more conducive state to channeling. So go ahead. And now what you can do is, now that you've grounded center channel using source energy, now you can go ahead and connect with your spirit guides and your loved ones a lot easier. And also angels and sprites, fairies, dragons, and on and on and on. So this is just one of the many, 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 many techniques that I teach my students on how to channel at much higher levels. If you're watching this streaming right now, I'm going to stop the streaming and then I'm going to go live again and connect to a few more channels. Okay, so if you're watching this, just reconnect. And if you're watching this on the recording, just go ahead and continue on and watch the next one. And we will talk to you soon. My name is Ken Lewicki, channelinginc.com.